Hi, folks. John Dunn here, RPG freelancer, publisher behind Melior Via. I'm up here today at Immortals Inc. with Mikey.
What's up, John? How's it going?
It's going well. How about you, Mikey?
You know, it is pretty well on my side, too.
Are you feeling long-lived today?
You know, sometimes no, but today, yes.
Maybe a little immortal? Could it be you've been sinking fangs into things?
Yeah, because they think I'm so young because of that.
Yeah, so we're going to have to kill you then.
Okay.
All right?
Just simple as that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Hopefully YouTube doesn't ban us with that right there.
Hopefully not, because the game we're going to talk about today is Night's Black Agents, and it is all about vampire hunting.
Nice.
And, you know, Mikey might be one.
And YouTube, we're not actually killing me here. I have to talk about this, so.
Sure he does, yeah.
And sure, I'm not a vampire.
So Night's Black Agents, it's actually been around for a little bit. It won the Emmy for Best Game and Best Writing in 2013. And that's probably in large part because the guy behind it is Ken Hite. We've talked about his name a few times in the past. Ken Hite is the guy responsible for Trail of Cthulhu, for the Gumshoe system. He's done a lot of really cool stuff with both the Lovecraft's mythos and also alternative history exploration. And he's worked on 13th Age and many, many other things. The title, Night's Black Agents, is taken from a quote from Macbeth, and it does use the Gumshoe system, much like Trail of Cthulhu. But this one, so it is an investigative game, but this is an investigative game that has a lot more action elements. So if you think of an action spy movie, you know, any of the James Bonds or maybe even Mission Impossible type, where you got a lot of wild action happening, you take that and then you add in a vampire conspiracy.
I mean, that sounds really, really cool.
That's what you got with Night's Black Agents.
There you go.
So diving into the book, the very intro bit about it first talks about the mode that you're going to be using for the play. And there's 4 that are presented. The first one is the burn mode, where characters are going to kind of disintegrate over time. They're just basically taking psychological damage from basically being involved in spycraft. It's a very, stressful job.
So instead of your hair falling out, it's you disintegrating.
Essentially, yeah.
Wow, taking burn to a different level.
The next one is the dust mode, which is kind of a gritty, less empowered characters, much less cinematic, where, everything they do, the characters are at risk. Then there's the mirror mode, where it's all about double crosses. Everybody's unreliable. When I think of Mission Impossible, especially the first one, I think that has a really strong theme there that fits in, right? And then stakes, where the characters have maybe unambiguous moral drives. So the characters are basically, your D&D paladin type, the super patriot, where what they're doing is, true and real and what they're motivated for. So they're killing vampires for Jesus, right?
Yeah, no throwing jokes at those people.
Exactly. After that, we get into the characters. And this is kind of basic Gumshoe with it, where you've got a breakdown of investigative and general abilities. But it does add a military occupational specialty. An MOS rather. So that's going to give your character this background before they could get into being, a spook, undercover agent type. They had to have had a military background, some kind of training.
Of course.
And that's going to be reflected in what abilities they have. And then we have our background section, and those are also very focused on criminal actions and espionage actions. And then once you get through that, then you get into your stability, your drives, trust and betrayal, which, might fit real well in with that whole mirror double cross mode that we mentioned earlier.
Of course.
And then a section on maps and legends. And those have some ties in with your character's background as well. After that, it dives into rules. The rules are pretty typical Gumshoe, but then we do have kind of action movie combat overlaid with that. And particularly when I was running Trail of Cthulhu, combat was not a real focus of the game, and chase scenes weren't quite as big a thing. That's really critical to this campaign, so you see that developed quite a bit further. There's also a shock and awe system, so that when the characters encounter those horrific elements, the vampires and their minions, how they react to that. Because they may be hardened soldiers who've seen a lot on the streets of battle, but maybe they haven't seen a vampire, rip somebody's throat out and then suck everything out with quite that level of gusto.
Or maybe just a vampire in general. Maybe they're like...
Absolutely. The last new rule section that I thought was really fitting for this was called Heat. And that's what happens when you attract unwanted attention from local law enforcement officers. You know, you don't really want your interactions with vampires to hit the press.
No.
Or you don't want to end up in jail because maybe you're an undercover agent who's working maybe internationally where you don't have full jurisdiction, right?
Yeah, and they're probably like, if you get it to press, they're going to be like, we don't want you doing this anymore.
Absolutely. Next section after that is tools. And this is kind of a neat combination of spy gear and paranormal hunting gear. And then the next big chapter is the vampire building system. This is the vampires chapter. And the neat thing about this is vampires are presented kind of vaguely. So the game master has the option to build the vampires that he wants to have show up in his campaign. And they're not necessarily anything that your players have seen before, or they might be a tweak or a twist on something they've encountered in the past. Because of this, each campaign's vampires are likely to be pretty different. And there's powers and backgrounds that are broken down into supernatural ones, the damned, aliens, and mutant. And then similarly, you've got a whole range of different weaknesses that your vampire has. So maybe they're fine in sunlight, or maybe, you know, a cross is no big deal, but garlic or wolfsbane might take them out right away.
Yeah, so it's different effects on different
Exactly.
vampires.
Maybe running water is a big problem for your vampires, or, you know, maybe they don't mind swimming in it. Your choice when you're setting this up. And then there's different ideas here for building the type of vampire that maybe is best suited for that mode that we mentioned earlier, right? Depending upon the play mode of the campaign, you might want to tweak your vampire so that they really accentuate specific elements. So if the characters are meant to be taking psychological damage and suffering from that, maybe your vampires are built around inflicting psychological damage, right? Or maybe if you want to have those double crosses in mirror campaign style play mode, then maybe the vampires are built around being able to seduce people and corrupt them and get them to flip sides. There's also a nice section here of sample vampires and other sample monsters. So maybe your campaign doesn't just have to feature vampires. Maybe it's got a range of other kinds of monsters you could have show up here. And then possibly the greatest portmanteau in the entire book, and maybe in quite a few recent books I've read, is the Vampiramid.
Ooh, so
yes.
Is this a social class for?
This is one of the possibilities for your vampire conspiracy, how it's built like a pyramid of vampires with power ascending as it goes up to reach the peak of the pyramid.
Do we find out who's at the top in the book?
Well, like I said, you get to build your campaign, so you get to choose who's at what level of
it's really
the
it's up to you.
Yeah. After that, there's a section on cities, and it talks about building your city and having that be applicable. It kind of makes the assumption that most of these adventures are going to be city-based, though maybe your whole campaign isn't set in the same city, though it certainly could be. And the example that's given here is Marseille. Then we have a chapter called Stories, which is GM advice, talks about building adventures and operations, and then using those together to build a campaign. And there's a sample setting build here that talks about spy stories, another option for Cthulhuid horrors, and finally one for psionic action, where maybe your vampires have psychic powers.
Ooh, dangerous.
There's a sample adventure after that called Sentries, and then, as Ken Height's really talented at doing, a whole bibliography of sources in the back of the book, so that if you need more materials, if you need fiction or nonfiction options, and compilations for different sources that you want to use to tweak your campaign or to get ideas, there's a really comprehensive, solid list of stuff right in there. After that, the appendices, there's about 20 pages of worksheets and some quick reference sheets. This is about 230 pages. It's hardcover. It's a full-color book from Pelgrane Publishing, and it is $50. We got copies here on the shelf at Immortals, Inc. If Vampire Conspiracy sounds like the thing you want to have your players interacting with and hunting and maybe even being corrupted by, give this one a go. I think the combination of the Gumshoe setting, Heights writing and a really cool setting could be just the thing to keep your campaign running for a while.
Well said, John. It sounds really one of one. I'm trying to think of a movie to inspire off of this, but I can't. So
maybe Blade.
Yeah, maybe. That's a good one. You know what? Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. I got
absolutely.
Yeah, take it easy, guys.
Till next time, folks. Good gaming.